Well, here we are, 5 months past the end of the Trump presidency, and there are two grand juries at this point in New York State looking into him. There's no question that both the Manhattan jury and the grand jury and the grand jury that's been called into account by the Attorney General of New York, obviously they mean business, and as I'll explain in just a second, this is going to get complicated. Um, I know a lot of people want to see Trump in a orange jumpsuit, as it were. Um, we're not there yet, and I realize that some people would rather drink strychnine than see Trump in an orange jumpsuit. So this is not exactly a nationwide desire to see Trump placed behind bars. In fact, I would say it's probably not even close to that. But nevertheless, that's what Trump and others are looking at. Uh, the Attorney General for the for New York State, Letitia James, uh, has taken the rather extraordinary step, but not completely unheard of, but a rather extraordinary step of convening a 6 month long grand jury. They usually meet for 1 month to focus on Donald Trump and the Trump organization. And she has indicated that this is a criminal matter from her point of view. And there's an old saying that a district attorney could indict a ham sandwich. Given Trump's tendency to live on the edge, if the Attorney General James wants to indict Trump, she can. It's that won't be hard to do. Same thing for the Manhattan District Attorney. Uh, he is he's already put an enormous amount of effort into his investigation into Trump and the Trump organization. Uh, so again, if Cyrus Vance wishes to indict Trump, he will be able to do so. Now, I'll give you a word of warning here. If you investigate somebody for 6 months and you focus on them for 6 months, if you did that to me, I would probably have a host of felony charges. So these things are at the discretion of the prosecuting attorney, in this case, district attorneys. So, we all violate the law. And the only question is, does this somehow or another rise to the point where a district attorney is willing to spend the time and money in order to indict someone? From what both Letitia James and Cyrus Vance have said, yeah, they're willing to spend the money. I don't know if they will in the long run indict, but I would say that the odds are far better that they will than that they will not. Of course, in their way is the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Now, DeSantis is a very bright guy, very capable fella, very conservative, a natural ally of Trump's, and he's going to have to sign the extradition treaty unless they arrest Trump outside the state of Florida. Trump lives in Florida, and normally it would be the Florida governor who would sign the extradition treaty. There are other governors can do it if he goes to their state. That gets complicated though. Well, if Trump is indicted, according to the U.S. Constitution, the governor, the state, whatever state it is, has to turn it over to the state that's asking for the person once there's an indictment. The governor is required to sign extradition request. Theoretically, they don't have any real, chance to not do so, as we're going to see. Though that's not completely true. But there's certainly nothing that can make a governor sign. I mean, what are you going to put gun to their heads? And so, we will. This could get interesting. The precedents for extradition. In the case of Kentucky versus Denison in 1860, Chief Justice Taney said that the states have a moral obligation to turn over fugitives from justice, that is, to extradite people, but there's no way to enforce it. And then later on, 127 years later, there's another case. Most people have never heard of this, Puerto Rico versus Branstad, which says, kind of, you can do this. It kind of nullified the Kentucky Denison case by saying that the federal courts could force a governor to sign. Well, that gets tricky, doesn't it now? Um, how do you enforce a decision that requires a specific positive response? If the process is automatic, then you don't need the governor's signature on these things, but you do. So the governor can always withhold his or her signature. That's just the way it is. And then you've got problems. And I don't know how you force someone to affix their signature. Do you want to end up with a scene like this? Some of you may remember this. Uh, are you going to have squadrons of U.S. Marshals breaking into governors' homes and dragging them out and forcing them to sign an extradition treaty? And what happens if you do that and you drag them down to the local police station and tell them, affix, sign? Um, what happens if he doesn't? Are you going to throw a governor in jail for that and keep him there until he signs? The people of Florida are entitled to have the leadership they have elected. And that would be an incredibly severe move. And it's hard for me to believe that the Supreme Court would had the slightest intention of having that happen. But that's where you are. Okay. Now, are there grounds on which a governor can properly, notice the word properly in there, refuse to sign an extradition order? We function, part of the U.S. Constitution says that the law of nations, the international law, runs here in the United States. So are there things in international law which essentially enhance or expand the U.S. Constitution's direction that states must sign, that they must turn over? And so there are a few exceptions to compelled extradition. The first one is a political arrest. If Joe Stalin asked to have Trotsky, his great enemy, returned from Mexico, Mexico would not have returned him because it would obviously have been a political arrest. And in fact, Stalin had to send someone to assassinate Trotsky in Mexico. Maybe not quite that dramatic here, but the principle is the same. If a governor believes that another state has done something for political purposes, has essentially indicted someone on the basis of politics, that governor, under international law, has the right to say, nope, not going to do it. The same thing goes to fair trial. International law guarantees you a fair trial. I know. Much of the world doesn't do it, but it's still international law. And so just imagine for those of you on the left who are watching this, just imagine if some DA in Western Kansas indicted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Would people who are left, progressive, liberal, whatever, would they feel like she would get a fair trial out in Western Kansas, a deeply Republican, very conservative region? No, it's the same thing here. Last time I checked, Manhattan's pretty liberal, pretty Democrat. Can you presume that there's going to be a fair trial? Well, that's up to the governor to make that decision. But if the governor decides that a fair trial will not happen, then he doesn't have to affix a signature. It's that simple. Safety. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, some people truly hate Trump. Can you guarantee his safety in a place like Manhattan? I don't know. Can you guarantee the safety of his officials? I don't know. And what happens if you drag Mike Pompeo up there? Will he be safe? I don't know. But I do know that I don't want to serve on that jury because the jurors are going to come under tremendous pressure. And you can do lots of things to keep jurors' names secret, but they're still going to come under tremendous pressure. And they're going to be aware that they are in danger, either from the left or from the right, because remember, both sides have something to say about this. So the left and the right, you could easily have competing mobs harassing people. And it might be outside of New York City too, as you could have riots in Albuquerque. Goodness knows, who knows where this is going to go. But the reality is that it's up to DeSantis whether or not to sign that treaty, the extradition. James and Vance can come up with perfectly legitimate indictments. And these issues on this screen can override that. But DeSantis might recognize a legitimate indictment and say, I'll sign. This is all in the hands of individuals at this point. The system doesn't handle this type of stuff very well. The founders never pictured handling a situation like this. So you've got a situation here where we've got three people who have enormous, the chance of having an enormous impact on the history of the United States for the next couple of years. Because believe me, once those indictments are filed, the country, which is already going crazy, will really go crazy, both left and right. And I don't know how we get out of this mess at this point. Probably the worst thing that ever happened to Trump probably was winning the presidency. Nice as it is to be a U.S. president. I suspect that none of these matters would ever have come up for prosecution. Trump's a pretty tough guy and he fights back hard, but these are not normal times. And the end result, of course, is that there's a real chance that we are going to have a conflict over extradition. And if Trump does go to trial, just wild conflict otherwise. So I'm not looking forward to this. There are good times to be political scientists and there are bad times to be a political scientist, and this may not be one of the best. Anyway, everybody take care, stay healthy, and I look forward to talking to you again.